Hi, thank you for joining us today. We're here for the session on your cyber journey. You ain't seen nothing yet. This is a session that originated back in 2013, and we've been able to bring back all but one of our panelists. Pamela Warren was not able to join us, and we miss her. But we do have four of the five people that were there for the original panel back in 2013. So today we have myself, I'm Lisa Lee. I'm the Chief Security Advisor and the Security, Compliance, and Identity Business Development Lead for Vertical Industries at Microsoft. We also have Patty Titus, who is the Chief Information Security Officer and Chief Privacy Officer at Markel. We have Amy Larson Kirkpatrick, who's the Global Communications Officer at the Global Cyber Alliance. And we have Michelle Dennedy, who's co-founder and partner at Privitus Consulting and also a stealth operation. And hopefully I said that correctly, Michelle.
It's close enough. It's perfect.
Close enough. So we're really excited to bring kind of a redo back or journey back to 2013 to look at where we were then, where we are now, what our journeys have been like, and to talk a little bit about some things that may help in your journey as you go along your career path. And so one of the things that we thought might be a great place to start would be to talk about what was actually going on in the industry and in the world at the time. And Michelle, I think you might have some good pointers on, what was the context setting for 2013?
Yeah, so 2013, just think about how busy we all thought we were and how innocent at the same time. This is pre-Edward Snowden collapse of the security industry. This is before GDPR was actually published with its finding authorities, before LGPD, before California had its crazy shiza going on. Lots of stuff seemed really hard then, and we had yet to experience 2020. So we thought we were working hard then, and boy, oh boy, it was good that we learned as much as we did then, because we needed it to pack in our backpacks.
And Patty, what do you remember about 2013?
Cyber innovation was really just starting to pick up. We have got a very crowded market space, and now today, well, back then you were just starting to see that hacker for hire or hacker for rent getting into the dark web, and I think almost anybody could do it, but it was just really starting to come into the foray. So that's what I remember about 2013.
Amy, anything you'd like to add to that in terms of what was going on back then?
Oh gosh, I think that Patty and Michelle pretty well covered it.
Very good. Well, what about how where we were working at the time? Amy, maybe you can start there. Where were you back in 2013?
Sure. Thanks, Lisa. So when we were doing this session at RSA in 2013, I was actually with the National Cyber Alliance, and I was getting ready to leave that organization. It was my last day with that organization. I'd been there for 5 years. It was my first 5 years in cybersecurity, and I had just moved from Washington, D.C. to California. My husband was in the service, and I was trying to figure out what was next. So I moved from being employed full-time to I was doing a little bit of consulting and starting to explore new opportunities.
Wow. How about you, Patty? Where were you at that point?
I was the CISO at the world's largest security company called Symantec.
And Michelle, what were you doing at the time?
So I had just, I think, fairly recently joined the rival security company of McAfee Intel. So yeah, I was a vice president and chief privacy officer there.
And I was working in the government. I was a bank examiner doing cybersecurity and technology reviews for a banking agency back then. So I was a regulator. So we've all had a long journey, a curvy road, if you will, ever since. Lots of things that have changed both in our personal lives as well as in our professional lives. We're going to start in kind of an odd place. We're going to start with, to one of our 2 rapid fire sessions. What was your worst experience that you remember along the way? Now, let me start with, we'll go with Michelle on this one.
Oh, because she knows I have tales to tell. I think there's two sides of it. One was very disconcerting personally, where a very drunken salesperson licked me during an executive meeting. And yes, you heard that right. He licked me, y'all. And he said, I wanted to see if you tasted as good as you looked. And it wasn't even that, which was disgusting. It was the fallout after that that was really unsettling. So that's sort of thing number one on like, wow, discrimination is real. And thing number two was showing up at a job where I was promised the moon and the stars. And it turned out somebody else had been given most of the budget, most of the role, most of the team. And I was there to be some sort of like privacy pinup Barbie girl.
How about Patty? What was your worst experience?
When I got to a job and realized that I immediately needed to start figuring out how to exit. It happens. It happens. It wasn't what I planned for. It wasn't what I thought. And so there you are.
I think my worst experience, two quick ones, was someone asking me what I was seeing in the industry about a couple minutes before we went on to do a panel. And then they stole every point that I gave them and used my points bullet by bullet when we got on stage, and made fun of me for not responding to the question when asked. So that, plus the fact that there was a time when I was kind of getting shoved into the box and my wings were getting clipped, make sure that I was going back into the box, and then they wanted to nail the lid on. So that was mine. Amy, what was your worst experience?
Yeah, a couple. So I was doing some advocacy work for a while, trying to pass some legislation, and got aggressively attacked by the opposition in a really scary way. Like, threats were made. And if you dig deep enough on the internet, you can find some of it. There were really terrible, awful things posted that just make me ill to this day. And then when I entered into cybersecurity, actually, one of the very first things I did was come to the RSA conference. I didn't really know anything about it. And I really experienced some terrible sexism and aggressive behavior by men in the industry. I got followed up the street one night by some conference goers, and so yeah, there was some bad behavior
Bad
there.
Moments,
Yeah.
So we're going to continue in that kind of not so positive moment for just a little bit, but shifting gears, Patty, you've had some really challenging roles and some big opportunities. But I wondered, could you share a little bit about what can happen to our dream job? What can happen when the dream job maybe isn't so dreamy?
Yeah. So you get to this new job and you think it's one thing, and the company has sold you on that, and you're convinced it's going to be everything and then something. And you find out that you've been sold a bill of goods, basically. It's similar to what Michelle experienced. Or even better, they tell you that they've had a data breach right before you got there. It's much more difficult to slide that one under the covers now with more data breach reporting, but nevertheless, it did happen in the past, and you've got a big pile of badness that you have to figure out immediately, or you're replacing somebody that started down the path and then got exited. So it is unfortunate, but dream jobs, I don't know where you set your expectations, but your dream job doesn't always end up quite where you thought it would be. So that's kind of my experience on a dream job going wrong.
And Michelle, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's a similar thing. And I think as you're working through your career, realize that what you dreamed might not be exactly what you thought it was going to be. It could be that you love getting your hands dirty and being in the thick of incident response. It could be that you really like people leadership. And it could be that once you get to the VP level, you realize it's like being in kindergarten again. It's about power and who gets FaceTime and stuff that doesn't feel as meaningful. So I think going in with an expectation that you're going to go in to learn things, it's not going to be what you expected. And even if everything is perfect internally with your company, into everyone's life, a little ransomware shall fall.
So Amy, have you had any experiences around the dream job, either the myth or maybe something went wrong?
Yeah, I do think that the dream job is a bit of a myth. You think about dreams, and not all dreams are great. They don't always go the way that you think they're going to go. But I went into a job one time really excited about it, and as soon as I got in, realized that there were a number of shady things going on, possibly illegal requests being made, and was not quite sure what I had gotten myself into. I had to start making some phone calls to board members, and it was not such a great situation.
And so for anyone, do you think there are times when you may have to take action based on how that dream job worked out or didn't work out?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. You have to be your own advocate, because you're going to be your number one cheerleader, promoter, advocate. Nobody else is really going to do it for you. So yes, you should absolutely take action.
And Michelle, I'm curious because you shared something with us as we were prepping for this about how, sometimes that environment can kind of trail with you. Can you talk about that just a little bit in terms of the dream job?
Yeah, it's like what is it, Buckaroo Banzai, Buckaroo or Buckaroo Banzai, like wherever you go, there you are. I have found that if you haven't resolved yourself and you haven't figured out what you're drawing it to, I went from one toxic man to another toxic man. I replayed the same toxic behavior and actually went to the new job and found exactly the same sort of toxic environment that I left because I hadn't really resolved. It's kind of like in your personal relationships where you're going to relive that relationship until you figure out how do you want to be in that moment? How do you want to stand up for yourself? What are you willing to do to accommodate a toxic personality? And I think sometimes we really have to stop and reflect and figure out, how do we avoid redoing the same toxic scenario? Sometimes it's not you, and sometimes it's you looking for the same externalities that are very, very dangerous.
So Patty, I'm curious, kind of a follow-up to your earlier points. Do you think there's just one dream job for each of us?
No, I don't. I don't think there's one dream job. I think over a period of time in your professional life, your idea of what your dream job is going to be is going to change. And, I like what Amy said, but dreams sometimes turn into nightmares, right? And so, you can be in your dream job, and some of it is about how you fit organizationally, or who you report to, how your personalities jive, how's the team dynamic. Are you getting influence and support at the top? So I think you can look for a silver lining in just about anything. And that, I think, is probably the key. And I've been in a job that didn't start out as my dream job, and it turned into my dream job. So I think, some of it is where you set your expectations. And I think that sometimes that gets us into a little bit of trouble as well.
Yeah, it does. So, we're going to start moving more toward the positive now, which is great. We're kind of going down the path in terms of your, think of your biggest career success, or maybe, some of those tough, challenging career decisions. What were the things that either helped you get to that success point, or maybe the things that helped you get through those tough decisions? In other words, what helped? Amy, what's something that has stood out for you?
Oh, that has helped. I think it is I do a lot of self-reflection. And I think one of the things is always asking myself, what am I doing that doesn't add value and doesn't get me to where I want to be? Whether it's the things that you do at work that are of little to no value, because maybe you're avoiding like the big, hairy, scary task that is going to be impactful. And even the things in your personal life that take up time, that don't bring you joy, that don't add value to your life, like, scrolling through social media in the middle of the night, or getting sucked into watching too much television that aren't helping move you forward. And I think that, asking yourself that question, what am I willing to let go of? What am I willing to stop? And so that I can move forward.
Michelle, what stands out for you in terms of things that, helped you get to those success points, or maybe helped you through those big challenging decisions?
Yeah, I think some successes sort of sneak up on you. And I used to call home. I promised my mother when I left home at 18 that I would call home every day, every Saturday. And in those conversations, both my parents were patent litigators, and my dad was a security architect. We basically every Saturday morning started writing the Privacy Engineers Manifesto together by accident. I was bringing my worries and my troubles as a litigator, and then later as a privacy officer, to my dad, who's very technical, my mom, who's an IP lawyer. And slowly over time, we started building what turned into the Privacy Engineers Manifesto. And it was one of the best experiences of my life to do a book signing with my father and my business partner, Jonathan Fox, to really try to teach the next generation how to take privacy requirements and policy requirements and really metabolize them into the infrastructure. So I think sometimes you think that you're doing something personal, you think that you're doing something that's just sort of inward looking, and what you're really doing is you're building that foundation where you have the opportunity to really give back.
So Patty, I know you've had lots of situations that, there have been some tough decisions, there have been some really great opportunities, but still decisions that went along with them. Is there anything that stands out for you that, really helped you in those kind of moments?
Yeah, what was important to me at one point is setting the boundaries, setting my goals and objectives. So what are you looking for in the next job? Are you looking for competitive salary? Are you looking for, will the company offer you an influencing position? What are the things that you want in order for you to be satisfied to leave one job and go to another, or one position? And I think, we don't necessarily set those boundaries up. We just think, oh, they're offering me, another $20,000 a year. That sounds great. I'll take it. I really wish that, each one of my positions, I wish somebody else would have negotiated for it, because you're never sure what you're worth. Am I worth $5 or 10? But I will tell you, if you've set some boundaries and some goals to say, in this next job, this is what I want, don't settle, because in our profession, in our field, it's kind of like the weather. If you wait 5 minutes, it's going to change. So something better will come along, but hold tight to those objectives. And the one thing that I've been very cautious with, especially as a female in this male-dominated career field, is to never let my base salary drop. That is just something that's non-negotiable. If the company says, we'll give you this comp package, but you've got to take a lower bonus or a lower base, for me, that's not going to happen, right? I can negotiate, bonus or things that are influenced in another way, but I've worked too hard to get that base to where I think I'm a little bit competitive to my male counterparts.
So I'm going to take a couple extra minutes here, just because we have some time, and this is, I think, really meaty topic. And so I was wondering, how much your network or the people that support you have factored into where you are today in your career. Amy, that one's for you.
Yeah, so I think it's hugely important. And, being here with this particular group of women is incredibly important to me because this is part of my personal board of directors, all three of these women. And these are the people who are real with me, who tell me the truth when I ask questions, have provided me counseling and guidance over the years, have allowed me to bounce things off of them as I'm working through my own career. So yeah, I think it's hugely important. And I think that networking is hugely important. You never know who is going to help you next. And to maintain those relationships, I think is critical. It's vital.
Yeah, I can say for myself that I would not have the job exactly that I have today, except for a contact. I had tried multiple different ways to get in. It was only through a contact that I even had the opportunity. So it really, you never know, when something's going to happen just because of that. All right, let's talk about, there's so many things to consider as you're planning your career, or you're trying to move up the ladder, or maybe you're trying to move out the door. Can you talk a little bit about, where are some areas where we, and particularly we as women, but all of us, so everyone included, but where do we need to get real? Where are some areas that maybe we need to think a little bit harder, be a little bit more clear with ourselves, more honest with ourselves, but where do we need to get real? Patty, I'll let you take that one first.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always think about, and it was actually really good advice, and I got it again from my current boss, just in my last performance evaluation, as oddly as that seems, it has come up yet again. So it must be something pearl of wisdom I needed to hear again. And that is work one grade up from where you are. So if you are working at that next level up, so let's say you're a VP and you want to be an SVP, if you're already working at that SVP level, then when the promotions come along, people are going to look at it and go, oh, well, that person's already working at that level. So that's an easy answer. So that was some really good advice that I just recently got from my current supervisor.
Wow. So that's not just a dress for the job you want, but kind of work in the job that you want, right?
Exactly. It's really hard. There's so many people that just come to work and they're like, today my job is X and that's all I'm going to do. And even in this COVID world where we've all been remote work, we've probably, some of us anyway, have put a lot of pressure on ourselves to work more. Doesn't necessarily mean you're working at the next level.
That's true. Michelle, what would you add to that in terms of areas where we need to get real?
Yeah, I think you have to really embrace the opportunity for yourself and your family. I think it's really easy to say, here's a C-level role, here's a very high compensation role, but suddenly that ticket punches out and it says global services. That's actually not a good moment. When the ticket came out and said United Global Services, it meant that I had spent way too much time away from my family. And you have to really understand, what are the trade-offs? We're only getting older. We're not getting any younger. So you have to really understand, like, how are you going to keep your mind together, your body together? How are you going to stay healthy, in all aspects of your life? So there's that piece of it. And then the other piece of it is there comes a time when you're known for doing a certain thing. And that's always been my time to like zag. Everyone else is zigging. I gotta zag. So, what's a girl to do in the middle of a pandemic? Oh, join as a CEO of a startup company. Of course, crazy. But you learn so much in that way. If you figure out that what you're really hungry for is learning and opportunity and changing and constantly challenging yourself and going into those places where no one has been, if that's what's important to you, you may not want to be on that step function of next level, next level, next level.
What about, Amy, if I could, I'm going to ask you a direct question, then I'll let you kind of fill in any way you want in terms of where we need to get real. But we hear a lot about imposter syndrome. Is that something that you think women are still challenged with? And, I've heard recently that men are challenged with imposter syndrome as well. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I do think that women are challenged with it, and we're challenged with it at different points in our career and our lives. And figuring out how to move past it is really important. And Know that, you're likely in the job that you're in because somebody saw that you had the capability to do it. So have confidence and believe in yourself and challenge yourself, and quit listening to the voice that's nagging at you saying you can't, because, I think the great saying is, if you believe you can, you can't. If you believe you can't, you probably can't. So it goes either way. Believe in yourself.
That's great. So we're back to our next rapid fire session. And so here I want you to, instead of, we've talked about our worst experience, let's look at it from the other angle. What's been your best experience? So rapid fire, best experience. Back to you, Patty.
Probably when I was the CISO, the first federal CISO at the Transportation Security Administration, standing up a brand new federal organization just after the tragedy of 9/11. That there was nothing like mission, get it done. It was by far the greatest experience. And I still think about it and wish the good old days would come back, but maybe not for that reason.
Michelle, how about you?
I already said book signing with my dad, so I'll pick. I was able to actually give the graduation convocation at Carnegie Mellon Graduate School and see some of my students in privacy engineering actually walking with their casting gowns and their families. And then, on the other level, teaching a young lady down in South Central LA about cyber safety and security. She came up to us afterwards, and I was with Neve from the MTV show Catfish. And she said, I have a secret. And I said, what's your secret? She's like, it's kind of scary. I want to be an astronaut. And my sort of delight in being able to connect her with some engineers at NASA and sort of making that, seemingly impossible dream come true for someone in the next generation. That is a rush that you cannot buy.
Fantastic. And I'll just interject there really quickly. We didn't mention, but, back in the early days when we were doing the first panel, we were all working or volunteering, I should say, in schools and going in and teaching kids about being safe online. And, so lots of good opportunity there to give back to our community. And I know everybody here is still doing that in various different ways. Amy, what was your best career experience?
Yes. So one of the big highlights of my career was Michelle Dennedy was with me. I had worked for a year and a half with some of the largest companies on the world to come up with a campaign around cybersecurity. And it got launched at the White House, and President Obama said the words "Stop, Think, Connect," and that was pretty spectacular. And then getting to watch that grow into an international campaign that was adopted around the world was pretty cool. And watching Michelle's youngest daughter sing the words a year later was, it was pretty special.
Well, yeah, no, I think that having the president use the words from the campaign that you started, that has to be really up there. So that's exciting. Mine doesn't come anywhere close to that, but I think one of my favorite experiences that's more recent is just thinking back to, having just come out a couple of months beforehand, having come out of the so-called box, the place where I was kind of getting shoved in the box, and, getting to be in an environment where I'm just a couple of months in a new role, and I'm sitting next to the CISO at our company and with one of our large customers, and the CISO had to go to another meeting, and he said, but you're in good hands. I'm leaving you with Lisa. You're in good hands. And I thought, wow, I'm not even sure if I know which end is up at this point. I'm so new. But, just that feeling of having come from where, I was being shoved down to where I was being lifted up, that really meant something to me. So that was a great experience for me. Doesn't come close to Mr. Obama talking about your program, though. So maybe more to aspire to there. How about in terms of, how did you improve your lot? How did you actually move up? What were some of the things that really factored into that for you? And Patty, we'll go to you with that one.
I think the mentoring program, in my mind, it's how we improve, and either you're mentored or you're a mentee. I have to say though, I get probably more out of my mentoring than probably my people I mentor. And so to me, it's a two-way dialogue. It's an opportunity to discuss challenges and things that are happening. But I think in my mind, it's mentoring. It's that lifting people as you rise. And that I think has been thank you, Nuala Kelly O'Connor, for saying that at an Executive Women's Forum meeting. And it has stuck in my head all these years that as I rise up in my position, I will bring others along with me.
And Amy, what's something there that in terms of, how you've improved or moved up, what's helped you with that?
I think it's a lot of it goes to being really thoughtful in educating myself and being responsible for my own career, advocating for myself, setting goals and setting a path towards achieving them, and then creating a network that supports me, like, all of you, I think has been a big factor in my career.
Michelle, anything you would add?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that is as you get more and more senior, the pyramid gets pointier and pointier, and sometimes it's stabbing you, and you can't be like the cool kid that goes out for drinks and lunch, and it's quite lonely. So you have to figure out, nobody's saying woe is me, but you have to figure out, how do you continue to keep your energy high, have someone that you can trust when you do feel weak, and understand that your words start to have a very big impact that you may not have realized. As you're coming up through the ranks, you can be a little more flippant and a little more jokey and a little more casual. As you get more and more senior, your words have very strong impact. And so really titrating yourself, I think we all feel like we're still 25 inside, but realizing, what is going on? What are my puts and pulls of command and control, and understanding, how to wield your power when you have it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Michelle. I did kind of an informal survey among people that I knew many, many years ago, and all in senior positions, and every single person, I think loneliness was the biggest thing that came out of it. They couldn't put words to it, but once you kind of asked the questions, you found out that really was the driving factor. So great point there. So I want to make sure that we mention, that we're still taking questions, and I should have mentioned that at the beginning, that we're, taking questions, and we'll answer those as we can. We have resources on the slides if you want to download. There's just a couple of slides where each of us have listed some resources that we thought were helpful, or could provide some insight to you, tools that we've used, tips that we have, things like that. So I'd encourage you to download the slides. And then I want us to finish with, we talked about you ain't seen nothing yet. What have you ladies not seen yet? Like what's next? What's coming? Or how would you interpret that for yourself? Patty, we'll go to you for that.
I have no idea. Absolutely none. I don't know what's next. I mean, who would have thought that we'd have all the ransomware that we got last year and this year? I mean, we never know what corner we're going to take. We never know what opportunity is going to come. But that's the coolest thing about this whole career field, this profession, is you don't know where the twists and turns are. Always when I was growing up, I wanted to have the eyeball on the end of my finger because I'm the youngest of 5. And we don't need to go into that. But then I could peek around the corner and see who was going to jump me. So we don't know what's around that corner, and I'm looking forward to what's next and what's going to continue to happen. It's an exciting field.
Michelle, how about you? What's next?
I like to be the jumper. I think that the minute you start getting comfortable, it's time to get uncomfortable. So, right now I'm fundraising for a stealth software company. I'm doing consultancy work in a proximate field, learning things about how to be a better business person, how to be a better ethicist, how to be a better leader in your community only adds to the excitement and the joy and really the fulfillment of this career path.
Okay. And Amy, what about you?
Yeah, I'm with Patty. I don't know what's next. There's so much happening in cybersecurity and privacy right now, and I think we're going to see some big changes. I see changes happening around the world in the communities that I work in. So I'm not sure that I can predict right now, but it's an exciting time to be in this field, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it is definitely an exciting time to be here. I think for me, in terms of what's next, it might be board positions. I'd like to take my financial experience as well as my cyber experience and maybe put that to good use, in some board positions. I'd also like to write a book. I know Michelle's done that. I haven't yet, but I'd like to write a leadership book. So I think there's something there. Of course, finding the time is always the trick and the difficulty there. I want to thank you, ladies, for joining us today. It's so great to come back. I do think that there's, a lot of path left for all of us. Some big, exciting things yet to come. We know there's some big challenges as well, because our industry is one that continues to challenge for sure. But thank you. Again, we'd encourage you to check out the resources and the slides, and we look forward to answering some more of your questions.